I stumbled upon 3 unbelievable true horror stories that will haunt your dreams forever. I never should have opened that door. It was a quiet evening. Just another night in my usual routine. The soft hum of the fridge, the distant drip of the leaky faucet, and the faint rustle of the wind outside were my only companions. But then I felt a chill creeping down my spine, reminding me of the old tales my grandmother used to tell. She always warned me about the door in the attic, the one everyone ignored. I often thought it was just a story to keep kids from wandering up there. The air felt thicker, colder, just standing there. I could see shadows flickering in the dim light, and I wondered if they were just my imagination or something darker. I crept closer, heart pounding like a drum, breath hitching in my throat. My fingers brushed against the doorknob, and an inexplicable urge overwhelmed me. A warning echoed in my mind, one I couldn't shake. I twisted the knob. The moment it opened, a gust of icy air engulfed me. Darkness spilled out like a living entity, whispering secrets I wasn't ready to hear. It felt as if something beyond that door was watching, waiting. The floorboards creaked beneath my feet, a sound far too loud in the silence. A skittering noise from inside made my feet freeze. Was it just a mouse? Or something much worse? I could almost smell the dampness, the crushing weight of long-forgotten memories pressing in on me. My heart raced with a mixture of dread and curiosity. Then the whispers came. Familiar voices, echoing dreams I had long buried. Help us, they called, sending shivers through my entire being. I wanted to shut the door, to run and forget, but I was paralyzed. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the attic behind me, sending my heart into a frenzy. I spun around, but nothing was there. The oppressive dark around the door swelled, shadows contorting as if alive. I stepped back, too afraid to look away, and that's when I saw a figure, barely visible in the darkness, just beyond the threshold. My breath caught, a scream clawing at my throat, and just like that, the door slammed shut, plunging me into silence. What had I unleashed? Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. In the suffocating silence that followed the slamming door, an unbearable weight settled in my chest. I pressed my ear against the cold wood, hoping to discern the truth behind the walls that had suddenly transformed into an ancient prison. The whispers faded into a ghostly echo, yet their call still wove through the air, drawing me back to that threshold, portal to unseen horrors. As I took a tentative step backward, a flicker of movement caught my eye through the attic window. Darkness draped over the aged floor, but in that fleeting moment, the moonlight illuminated something. A figure, hunched and grotesque, stood outside, beneath a gnarled tree whose branches clawed at the night sky. My heart raced. Those twisted limbs looked almost familiar, like the play of shadows from inside the attic had come alive, stretching into the world outside. That I turned away from the sight, desperate to abandon the weight of dread I had welcomed so eagerly. But the moment I resolved to leave, a faint sound broke the stillness, soft and rhythmic, like a slow, deliberate breathing. It pulsated through the air, rising and falling in tempo, as if the darkness itself had a heartbeat. Suzuri of sound filled the room, snatches of laughter rising from nowhere, a sickly sweet melody that gnawed at my sanity. I tore my gaze from the door, battling the urge to turn back. Each breath became a waking nightmare, saturating my lungs with a metallic tang, a telltale sign of the dread that loomed. I stumbled back down the staircase, the stairs groaning underfoot as if they were reluctant to let me go. But I couldn't escape the oppressive feeling, the weight of dozens of unseen eyes lurking in the shadows. They were watching me, mocking me, as if they reveled in my fear, feeding off my paranoia. Once back in the living room, I dared a glance behind me. To my horror, the faint whispers crescendoed into a symphony of ghostly wails. They transcended mere sound, wrapping around me like a shroud, distorting the very air I breathed. "Help us," they pleaded, the resonance like a siren's song, igniting the rawest instincts within me to flee. But every instinct I had urged me to uncover their origin, to pull back the veil of darkness that I gritted my teeth as I returned to the door, unwillingly drawn by that insistent pull. The air felt electric now, swirling with danger and trepidation. Wary fingers traced the splintered wood as I felt no. Envisioned something pulsing on the other side. I tried to rationalize, to dismiss the voices as tricks of the mind. Yet, with each heartbeat, the whispers twisted to a more commanding tone. "Let us in," they beckoned. A chant rising from the depths of despair. I could feel myself wavering. A battle raging within. Should I invite whatever lay beyond the threshold into my world? Or should I remain a prisoner of my own sanity? The decision throbbed in my veins. Curiosity ignited by a primal sense urged me forward, a compulsion like a moth to the flame. Suddenly, the doorknob turned. It twisted on its own accord, the sound of its rusting scrape deafening in the suffocating stillness. My pulse raced. I was frozen between the instinct to rush to safety and the morbid curiosity that seduced me closer. But before I could summon a response, the door flung open with an otherworldly force, opening the maw of darkness before me. My breath hitched, throat closing as an unfathomable shadow loomed, unsettling in its sheer presence. The air thickened, a tangible darkness coiling around my limbs, choking the very essence of light from the room behind me. Then, from the depths of that shadow, a voice cracked through the night, low and rasping. "You opened the door. Now you must come back." The floor beneath my feet trembled, and I felt the floorboards ripple like disturbed waters. I staggered backward, panic rising. But it was too late. The voice was no longer a whisper. It was a cacophony, the voices of the forgotten. The anguished cries of souls trapped in limbo now called out for their savior. My heart sank as I realized the walls around me began to pulse with dark energy, gaping cracks appearing, long-buried secrets seeping out amid the shifting shadows. I turned to run, but from the depths of the attic there came a Surhaya tidal wave of darkness hurtling toward me, arms outstretched, faces morphing into agony as they flooded through like a nightmare unleashed, and just before the horrors swallowed me whole, I felt icy fingers wrap around my throat, a chilling whisper brushing against my ear, "You will never leave." I gasped as the swirling mass of darkness enveloped me, constricting like a noose, the air thick with cries that clawed at my sanity. The overwhelming despair felt palpable, a sickening weight that crushed my chest, robbing me of breath. As I was drawn deeper into the abyss, I caught fleeting glimpses of the faces within twisted visages trapped in a web of torment. They reached out to me, their eyes wide with pleading, their mouths soundless yet screaming in eternal torment echoing through the dense shadows. I could feel the icy tendrils slithering around my limbs, dragging me backward, deeper into the recesses of the house where time had ceased to exist. Each step into that umbral void was a betrayal, my body fighting against my mind's morbid fascination. Even as I clawed at the earth beneath me, trying to pull away from the malevolence that beckoned, the shadows amplified, merging together in grotesque forms, whispering secrets too horrifying to comprehend. A distant memory flickered within me, a time before the horror, a sliver of light from childhood days spent laughing beneath the warm sun. But now, that warmth felt like a cruel joke, swallowed by this endless night. I could almost hear their laughter, the sweet echoes of my family, their presence stirring a tempest of agony within my heart. Were they still out there, alive? Or had they been consumed by the very darkness that sought to claim me now? "Turn back," I shouted, my voice a tremble, slicing through the murky air just as echoes of laughter morphed into anguished howls. The walls close in, seeming to contract with each desperate plea as if the house itself was sentient, relishing my suffering. Cold laughter billowed around me, mocking and gleeful, as shadows draped themselves over everything in sight, devouring what little light remained. Determined to escape, I pressed forward, stumbling over unseen roots that clawed at my feet, trying to snare me within their deadly grasp. Then, like an inchworm creeping forward in time-lapse, I felt the ground shift beneath me, A palpable energy vibrated through the very wood of the floors. They were alive, and they knew me. Desperation surged like wildfire through my veins. I reached for the nearest doorframe, my fingers scraping against the splintered wood, the sensation igniting my senses. For a moment, my resolve wavered. What lay within other rooms? Were there more forgotten souls, trapped just like me, swirling in agony? But hearing the crescendo of those wails, full of longing, full of torment, I could not give in suddenly. The tendrils of darkness drew back in surprise, recoiling as if startled, and in that heartbeat, I seized my chance. I dashed past the threshold of the living room, plunging toward the exit like a drowning person gasping for air. I reached for the door handle, cold and slick with dampness. Just as I turned, a bone-chilling scream pierced the silence, echoing from the depths of the house. Though the sound didn't belong to me, I slammed the door shut behind me, my heart hammering violently as I leaned against it, panting. But the relief was short-lived. The whispers returned, chorus upon chorus rising around me, chanting my name, weaving tragedy in syllables that dripped with despair. It was then that I noticed shadows pooling at the edges of the walls, crawling forth like ink spilling on parchment. Unfurling in grotesque contortions, each word they spoke vibrated through the air, thick with ancient knowledge and haunting ferocity. They told tales that twisted my very bena history of death and anguish strewn across the very boards I stood upon. The home I once thought harbored memories turning into a mausoleum of corpses, and just as the shadows began to close in once more, in the corner of my eye, a flicker of brightness emerged. A ghostly figure, ethereal yet familiar, stepped forth from the darkness. As my breath caught in my throat, recognition washed over me, mingling with dread. It was her, the one I had lost, the spark of hope, yet now intermingling with the cold anguish of whatever fate had sealed our connection. That I in a heartbeat. Her hand reached out toward me, her expression twisting between longing and terror. "You must choose," she gasped, voice barely a whisper against the chorus of wails, "before the darkness consumes us both." The shadows lunged, a feral scream echoing in unison as I grappled with the impossible decision before me: embrace the warmth of the past, or confront a darkness that threatened to envelop my very soul. And as I looked into her eyes, I felt the void behind me surge with undeniable hunger, urging me to make a choice before it was too late. I took a step closer to the light, and the world around me shattered into a kaleidoscope of screams and laughter, the air thickening with the weight of an unspeakable truth. Just as I reached out for her, the ground split open beneath my feet, plunging me into an abyss darker than the nightmares that had plagued my waking hours. I heard one last cry from her lips as I felt a haunting echo that would haunt my dreams forever. As the void enveloped me, time seemed to warp, twisting like a spiraling vortex. I plummeted into shadows, an endless descent where the fabric of reality bled away with every heartbeat. Within that disorienting plunge, memories flickered chaotically. I saw faces, many faces, frantically reaching out for me, a prism reflecting the despair I now recognized was mine. "What have I done?" I gasped, but the words were swallowed by the darkness, drowned in a cacophony of anguish. Suddenly, the ground solidified beneath me, yet it was no sanctuary. I found myself in a cavernous room burgeoning with thick fog, the air alive with whispers, confessions, and secrets that intertwined as if they were an entity unto themselves. Struggling to gain my bearings, I turned to examine the edges of the room, half expecting to find my lost loved ones, only to be met by a mirror, grotesque shard poised against the wall. But this mirror was not a reflection I recognized. The figure gazing back at me was a twisted version of myself, eyes hollow, skin drawn tight over a skull that grinned with malevolence. It smiled back, satisfaction gleaming in its vacant stare. "Welcome to the other side," it rasped, its voice a serpentine hiss wrapping around me like a vice. "You've come to understand your demons, haven't you?" I stumbled back, heart racing, caught between recognition and revulsion. Memories scattered like shards of glass, dark nights spent screaming into the void, desperate loneliness, the gaping maw of grief swallowing joy whole. Each fragment sliced at my soul, drawing forth the horror etched deep within my being. "You can escape," the reflection taunted. "All you have to do is give in. It wants you to surrender. Don't you see? Embrace your despair. Cold tendrils of fear snaked down my spine, constricting tighter as shadows writhed and pulsed around my feet. I realized the whispers transcended mere echoes. They were conduits to a sinister consciousness, an awareness awakening within the darkness that lingered just beyond sight. It beckoned me to join its dance of despair, to become one with the suffering that was etched into the very bones of this accursed place. I shouted, hands trembling as I pressed against the cool surface of the mirror in desperation. I refused to give in, but the sudden rush of overwhelming emotion diluted my resolve. As if in response to my shout, a low rumble erupted from the walls, the house groaning like a living entity roused from slumber. The fog swirled violently, and through its maw, I saw flickers of shadows twisting into grotesque forms, their faces morphing into the sleek visages of my family once tender, now monstrous. Their mouths moved as they wailed, my heart twisting painfully at the sight. Their hands extended, yearning to pull me into their embrace, their soft murmurs now turning to guttural screams echoing my own name. "Help us," they cried, urgency lacing their ghostly tones. "Join us, don't leave us behind." No, I stumbled back, horror coursing through me, as I faced the twisted reflection in the mirror once more. "You're not them." The visage smirked in slick amusement. "But they are yours, trapped by your refusal to acknowledge the truth. They need you just as you need them. Embrace the pain, and you may find them again." That as terror clutched at my throat, the world blurred. Light and dark morphed into a swarm of flickering shapes. Shadows flickered like candles caught in a storm, illuminating a doorway at the far end of the cavernous room, a glimmer of pale light breaking through the morbid chaos. It was an escape, a chance to flee from the bitter reality that surrounded me. With renewed determination, I surged toward it, the whispers spiraling into a frenzied chorus behind me, every word a weight threatening to drag me back into the pit of despair. "Don't go. You can't escape your fate." The air crackled with malevolence as the shadows lunged, reaching with skeletal fingers that grasped at my clothes, tearing into flesh. With my heart pounding in a tempest of pain and fear, I threw myself through the doorway, desperate to break free from their grasp. But instead of freedom, I found myself tumbling down yet again, the ground giving way beneath me into another darkness, but into an immense chamber of light. The blinding brightness pierced my eyes, but as I squinted, a horror lay ahead. The walls were lined with faces, countless souls, each one a mirror of my family, trapped in their own perpetually tormenting cycles. Mouths agape as if eternally screaming, I felt bile rise in my throat, the walls pulsating like a heartbeat as if they, too, were living vessels containing the sorrow of the damned. My heart sank deeper into my chest, realizing that their desperate cries were my own. I had become a vessel of sorrow, teetering on the precipice of some unfathomable hell. As I turned to retreat, a hand shot out from within the wall, cold and spectral, gripping my wrist with a jarring force. I gasped, the shriek of horror escaping my lips as my fear morphed into despair. It was her face shimmering, yet twisted by unending grief. "You can't leave me." Her voice echoed like a death knell, the brightness of the chamber dimming with her plea. "You chose this darkness. You can't escape." As her grip tightened, piercing through my flesh like ice, the walls surged forth, faces elongating with their wails, blending into a grotesque mask of pure agony. I was backed into an inevitable corner, not just of space, but of fate, where fear and love intertwined in an epic wrestling match. And just when it felt like once again I'd be lost forever, a new voice emerged, a deeper growl, a shadow more profound than any ounce of light I had fought for. "Join them, or be consumed," it intoned, resonating with a force that shook the very ground of my despair. Did I end that chilling moment? The ground beneath me split like the gaping maw of an abyss, ready to swallow me whole once again. I felt the tendrils of darkness reach for me, the icy grip of countless hands pulling me back toward my family or perhaps their torment. The last thing I remember was the blinding light folding in on itself, engulfing me once more, as I was torn between two worlds, a choice not of flesh, but of soul, with the howls of the forgotten reverberating in my ears, and then darkness claimed me once again. As the void settled around me, I lost all sense of time, teetering on the brink of consciousness and despair. I was enveloped in an oppressive silence that felt suffocating, my breaths shallow and frantic. But even in the stillness, I could feel its presence looming, patient, watching. Each heartbeat was a countdown, a reminder that the darkness was not merely a backdrop, but a living entity hungry for my surrender. With each passing moment, the weight of despair morphed into a gnawing hunger, an insidious urge to relinquish my resistance. I had once fought against the shadows, but their whispers had grown louder, seeping into every corner of my mind. Embrace us, they urged, their voices like silk wrapping around me, warm and enticing. Let go of the pain and join the suffering of others. You are not alone. The blinding light flickered like a dying star, fading alongside my will to fight. Memories of laughter, love, and warmth echoed within me as I felt my grip on them slip. And yet, just as I began to succumb, a shattering sound pierced through the heavy stillness, the cracking of a porcelain doll, its face stone-cold and lifeless, that I jolted upright to find myself in a different chamber this time, one less grand but undeniably more sinister. An ashen room. The walls were stricken with a sickening hue, a yellowish gray that seemed to pulse with disdain. Littered on the floor were shards of broken glass, glittering painfully in the dim light. Pulling my hands to my chest, I felt the remnants of the mirror's resilience, a dull ache lingering where the dark figure had touched me. And then there it was, a figure shadowed in the corner, dark and drooping like an old tapestry that had once belonged to someone cherished, now long lost to rot. I squinted, recognizing the matted hair and trembling shoulders. It was her, the daughter I had lost long ago. "Mom," she called, her voice faltering as it twisted through the space. A broken melody that set my thoughts fluttering tumultuously. Each syllable was woven with sorrow, splintering my resolve. My heart surged, a tumultuous tide of guilt and longing, and for a heartbeat, hope flickered like a candle in the wind. "Help me, Mommy. Please." Her outstretched hand summoned a wave of emotion that crashed over me, igniting a desperate yearning that clawed at my insides. But just as my legs propelled me forward, the shadows stirred, swirling around my daughter as if to steal her from me once more. Her face contorted in existential agony, like a marionette bound to an unseen puppeteer. "Stay away," I shouted hoarsely, lunging just a fraction closer. But the darkness knotted tighter around her, revealing skeletal fingers that gripped her neck with raw intent. "What is this? Let her go," I demanded, my voice shaking with a mixture of fury and unrestrained fear. "No," came a shriek that put ice in my veins. "You have no control here. She belongs to us now." The shadows surged, and their grip tightened, squeezing away her fading light like squeezing the last breath from a dying star. I threw myself at the specter, feeling a blistering heat radiate behind my eyes as raw despair ignited into a frantic rage. The world closed in as my desperate cries mixed with her agonizing wails, a cacophony that ricocheted off the walls of the chamber, pleading for release from the encroaching darkness. In an instant, the room rocked violently as if responding to my anguish. Shards of glass sprang forth, serrated pieces flinging through the air like darts, plunging into the decrepit walls around us. "You will suffer if you do not accept what you have wrought," they hissed in unison, a thousand voices coiling around my mind. Just as I seemed poised to tear through the darkness, time warped around me again, twisting like a cyclone. I stumbled, grasping at the air, and faded into a corridor lined with remnants of my past old photographs that flickered in and out of existence. Family gatherings marred by shadows, moments of laughter overshadowed by gloom. Each frame drew me closer to a quaint door at the end of the corridor, shimmering in an unsettling light that pulsed like a heartbeat. That I reached for the door, trembling with trepidation. This might bring me to her, but what lurked behind it? The air grew thick as I swung the door open, the hinges creaking with a weight of menace. Beyond was an endless abyss, a barren expanse that morphed and twisted, digging into the recesses of my mind. There, amid the swirling chaos, I could see Hermie's daughter floating just out of reach, her eyes wide with terror, pleading for my help. But the shadows were there, chaining her in day-long despair. A cruel mockery of hope. "Mom!" she screamed, and at that moment, the shadows jerked her back into their thrall, twisting her body with a revolting snap. I staggered, feeling the cold grip of ultimate void close in around me, drowning any hope of a clear thought, and just as I attempted to yank her free, the darkness manifested next to me, a roiling mass of torment and anguish. Words sharper than razors sliced through the fog surrounding us. Join her, or lose her forever. With my heart in my throat, I understood the bargain I was about to make. But my resolve was eroding with every beat of the frantic rhythm close to my ear. Just as I channeled every ounce of strength to fight against the shadows, I felt the ground beneath me crumble, plummeting once more into that merciless void. I screamed, the sound echoing into nothingness. But just as the darkness coalesced around me, a flash of warmth enveloped my senses, igniting an ember of hope. I lunged blindly, attempting to grasp anything before the abyss swallowed me whole. There, lingering on the verge of madness, I realized the inevitable. In this dance of despair, perhaps I would finally understand the true nature of my torment. And then, darkness clutched at my throat, cradling me against an eternity of unspeakable anguish. As my vision blurred, I gasped for air, feeling the oppressive weight of something far more sinister than mere darkness. Raw panic surged through me as I clawed at the unseen hands reaching for my throat, their grip like ice, relentless and suffocating. My surroundings melted into the inky void, indistinguishable from the memories that flitted in and out of focus faces of loved ones lost, their expressions twisted beyond recognition, pleading with me. "Wake up!" I shouted, but the words dissolved into disembodied whispers, mingling with the chilling echoes of long-buried fears. With every frantic attempt to unlatch myself from the grip of the shadows, they only intensified, spooling tighter, threatening to drag me deeper into their abyss. The flicker of warmth I had felt moments before flickered out, leaving me devoid of hope. I jerked upwards, fighting against the unseen bonds that held me in a void that smelled of decay and familiarity, a heavily saturated scent of the past. It was all too real, too intimate. Memories of my daughter wrapped tightly around me like the very shadows threatening to claim my soul. And then, a heartbeat cut through the silence, steady and horrorously normal. Instinctively, it drew my gaze to a flickering light in the distance, drawing me like a moth, illuminating a grotesque scene. What was once a normal house, the home that had held so much warmth and laughter, now appeared as nothing more than a mausoleum, its dilapidated structure covered in black vines that seemed to pulsate with a life of their own. The front porch creaked under the weight of unspeakable tension, and I took a halting step forward, heart hammering as the familiar lull of my past whispered close by. "Come home," it urged. The piecing memories suffocated the air, thickening every breath. As I crossed the threshold, an unbearable wave of nostalgia washed over me, forcing me to cover my mouth with shaking hands. Family portraits hung crookedly on the walls, each face warped into a ghastly smile that spoke of despair beneath faux joy. The bittersweet nostalgia splintered my resolve, and I hesitated, caught between the thin veil of reality and the pervasive darkness that throbbed in this forsaken place. A child's laughter echoed from the back of the house, dancing tantalizingly through the air, a sound so achingly familiar that it clawed at my heart. Was it her? Could it truly be my sweet girl? Driven by a deep instinct to find her, I staggered toward the Sauersea playroom strewn haphazardly with toys that seemed frozen mid-game, captured in macabre stillness. But there was no sign of her, only that laughter, innocent yet laced with sardonic cruelty, filling the corners of the room like a festering wound. I scanned the barren space, terror fortifying my legs, but as I turned to leave, the air thickened. The door slammed shut, sending a shock through my bones. "Oh, let me out," I bellowed, banging my fists against the unyielding wood. In response, the shadows crept through the cracks, tendrils of darkness weaving into the room. I felt their cold caress against my skin, like fingertips grazing the contours of my fear. Then I noticed something dark shift at the far end of the room, something familiar within the shadows. My breath hitched as realization hit the dolls. Rows upon rows of them sat with lifeless eyes, their porcelain faces grim and grotesquely mocking, mirroring the terror flashing in me. And at the center, the one who seemed to observe me with a cruel delight was an exact replica of my daughter. Its mouth moved, but only choked whispers emanated, words of torment just beyond understanding. "Mommy, save us," it echoed, the voice a twisted amalgamation of my daughter's laughter and despair. Suddenly, a blinding surge of energy rippled through the house, the walls groaning as if alive. The dolls jerked, their heads snapping to face me in unison. I stumbled back, grasping my head as cacophony erupted, their cries merging into a torrent of anguish. "Join us! Join us! Join us!" The chant thrummed through the fabric of reality. Just then, a figure appeared. In the doorway, a garishly familiar silhouette, my daughter's visage, torn between innocence and horror, her eyes widening as she reached for the door. The shadows tumbled after her, but her gaze was locked on me, pleading and terrified. "Mom, they won't let me go." I lunged forward, propelled by desperation alone. The barrier of darkness felt alive, burning the constraints of sanity with its touch. Each step forward felt like an insurmountable effort, the weight of my daughter's gaze pushing me against an invisible wall. "Hold on," I screamed, reaching for her just as she began to retreat, pulled back by the unrelenting grasp of darkness. My fingertips grazed her wrist, hot and clammy like a fever dream, and for a moment, our connection pulsed with the warmth of lost affection. But as I tightened my grip, the room shivered, the walls creaking with pain. And then I felt something sinister shifted in the shadows behind her, an insidious presence swelling on the periphery. My daughter's face contorted in agony as icy tendrils gripped her tighter. "Oh!" I shrieked, but my voice was smothered by the howling chaos. The world around us began to fracture, deep cracks forming along the walls, and the dolls erupted into tumultuous screams that clawed at my own sanity. That I realized, with growing dread, I couldn't save her from this place. Not as long as I remained here. Just as I turned to make my escape, something shattered in the distance, the sound sharp and final, slicing through the cries. The floor beneath me began to splinter, and I realized the house itself was coming apart. Time twisted, each second a heartbeat of despair as darkness sprawled, ready to claim me. "Mommy!" The last desperate wail splintered my heart, a fractal echo of pain, before silence fell with malevolent finalition, insidious calm waiting just beneath. And then I vanished in a flash of unrelenting chaos. The last image burned into my mind, the horrifying reflection of countless faces, who I once loved, who I would never escape, shackled forever in the shadows. But as the void swallowed me again, a single whisper inhabited the darkness. "Welcome home." The shadows whispered again, coiling around me like a serpent ready to strike, their very essence permeating my senses with a stench of fear and despair. I stood suspended in darkness, a weight heavier than gravity pressing down on my shoulders. A cold sweat broke out on my skin as the echo of my daughter's call resonated through the recesses of my mind, hauntingly sweet yet bitterly tainted with unfathomable sorrow. "Welcome home." The words mocked me, unfurling like black vines, creeping deeper into my thoughts. Instead of the comforting embrace of familiarity, there was a layer of suffocating dread that seeped into my bones. I hadn't simply returned to the past. I had stumbled into a mausoleum of lost souls, each corner echoing with the cries of those irrevocably entwined with some dark fate. I was no longer certain whether I stood in the remnants of my childhood home or in a twisted parody of what it once was. Suddenly, with a lurch, the ground beneath me shifted. A crack split through the wooden floorboards, a gaping maw that seemed to breathe, beckoning me closer. I felt an uncontrollable urge to peer into its depths, its darkness feigning warmth like the breath of an anguished beast. Just then, the dolls began to shift again. Their eyes glinted like shards of ice, a potent testament to the malevolence fueling their existence. My heartbeat thundered in my ears, drowning out the cacophony of whispers urging me to join this grotesque gathering. I tore my gaze away from them, intent on finding the exit, the remnants of my sanity clinging desperately to rational thought. But as I turned, a low moan reverberated through the room, a sound more twisted than the cries of the dolls. The wall before me trembled, and a door I had not noticed before materialized, swollen and grotesque, its surface oozing a dark, tar-like substance. The whispers crescendoed, surrounding me with a chorus of anguish. I hesitated, torn between fleeing and the morbid curiosity that pulled me closer. The moaning intensified, reverberating in my chest. I reached for the doorknob, slick and unyielding, daring myself to turn it. What lay beyond could be the answer to my daughter's plight, or an even deeper abyss. With a sudden burst of resolve, I twisted the knob, the door creaking open to reveal an expansive hallway stretching into infinity, swallowed by an eerie mist that snaked like long fingers. A sickly, sweet smell wafted through, reminiscent of forgotten childhood comforts now turned sour. A figure loomed in the darkness at the end, barely illuminated by flickering light that sputtered like a dying ember. The outline was unfamiliar yet achingly familiar, a tapestry of longing layered with dread. My heart raced as I recognized the form, the delicate arch of its shoulders, the distinct sway of its silhouette. It was Hermie's daughter, or at least a specter born of my deepest regrets. "Mommy," she whispered. Her voice dripped with a sadness that cut deeper than any knife. "You must find me." "Where are you?" I yelled into the void, every ounce of desperation fueling my words. "Why are you doing this?" But deeper shadows began to stir, pooling at my feet and swirling hungrily around me. The laughter returned, more twisted than before, echoing from the depths of the hallway, a symphony of anguish orchestrated by unseen hands. A distorted face appeared within the mist, an abomination, a pallid visage of a woman with hollow eyes and a grotesque smile that unfurled against the wall like a black hole. "She is ours now," it shrieked in harmony with the cacophonous laughter, its voice a collision of whispers, each syllable dripping with malice. "Let her go." I found my voice rising in fury, battling against the paralyzing grip of fear. The figure of my daughter blinked away, swallowed by the darkness while the wall warped at my back, the gaping hole now a portal writhing with ghostly tendrils. One last glare, one final cry echoed in my heart. I took a step forward. But the moment I did, 1,000 chilling faces appeared before me. They were the remnants of lives snuffed out, begging for relief, pleading to be freed from this nightmare. "Join us. Join us," they sang in a haunting harmony, their eyes hollow yet pleading. I in my frantic retreat. The taunted laughter morphed into suffocating gasps, while the walls edged closer, the shadows shifting and pulsating with an insatiable hunger that turned my insides to ice. The faces in the void pressed closer, their fingers stretching towards me as if they could pull me into their cursed existence. I turned to flee, racing back towards the playroom, heart pounding like a drum against the force that sought to hold me down. Yet, the laughter grew louder, the abyss expanding as the very foundation beneath me trembled. My feet faltered on the splintered floor, the blackness pulling, tugging at my very essence, and then, in a moment where darkness met light, a gash of brilliance split the air. Another voice, vibrant and untouched, cut through the cacophony, emanating from the cracks, a voice so sweet it curdled my insides with grief. "Mommy, help me!" And before I could react, the floor gave way and I screamed as I plummeted through the dark void, twisting and turning, the world around me fracturing into splinters of light and pain. I reached out wildly, groping for something, anything to grasp onto, but found only the suffocating shadows engulfing me. Just as I was swallowed by a darkness deeper than night, that familiar voice echoed one last time. "You should have stayed away," and then silence. I came to in a realm eclipsed by night, where time held no sway, and reality felt like a fragile thread threatening to snap. The ground was hard and cold beneath me, and I struggled to rise, half expecting the gnashing of teeth and whispers of malice to engulf me once more. Instead, a hollow stillness echoed around me, broken only by the thudding of my heart, which felt resolute in the face of the unknown. Shakily, I rose to my feet, bracing against an unseen force that urged me to stay down. Shadows wriggled at the corners of my vision, whispering secrets just beyond my reach. I turned slowly, scanning the dismal void for any sign of my daughter or the grotesque figures from moments ago. Anxiety pounded in synchrony with the distant giggles of children. Frenetic and dissonant, They warped through the air like a funereal lullaby, and the pitch black. A flicker of light emerged, illuminating fragments of the place I had fallen into. It flickered like a candle caught in a breeze, revealing bones strewn in macabre patterns, some human, others not. Each bone appeared polished, as if lovingly prepared for display. They whispered secrets of the past, tales of despair entwined within the marrow. The light pulsed rhythmically, luring me forward with its deceptive warmth. Instinctively, I moved towards it, my body propelled by an eerie compulsion. I reached a half-collapsed room, where the light flickered, illuminating faded photographs that hung precariously on the walls. Faces smiled back at me, happy, carefree children, their laughter frozen in time. Yet something was tragically wrong. Their eyes held a depth that hinted at voids where their souls should have been. Curiosity strained against fear as I stepped further in. The malicious whispers grew louder here, swirling around my ears, and for the first time, I heard them distinctly. Find her, my breath hitched as the photos seemed to shift, as if their eyes followed my every move, imploring me silently to succumb to the darkness. Mommy, help me. The voice pierced through the haze of dread, crystalline and clear. It clung to my heart like ivy choking a tree. It was her, my daughter. Where are you? I shouted, desperation clawing at my throat. The response was a clattering, like nails skittering across a surface. I turned abruptly, adrenaline coursing through me as I followed the sound, only to find a dusty antique chest standing untouched in the corner, its edges dark and embossed with chilling symbols that writhed in the dim light. I hesitated, dread pooling in my stomach. Those symbols were familiar. They mirrored the carvings I had once traced as a child, tales of creatures and worlds beyond our own, of sacrifices made in devotion to dark entities. My fingers trembled as I approached, but the voice to my right rang fervently, "Mommy, please." I wrenched open the chest's lid, the sound echoing like thunder in the silence. Inside lay a mound of tiny, delicate items, what appeared to be children's trinkets. A broken bracelet, a porcelain doll with hollow eyes, crumpled drawings in pastel hues, and a small silver locket gleaming faintly. My heart sank as I recognized the locket. It belonged to her. Before I could register the implications, a bitter wind howled through the room, extinguishing the flickering light and bathing everything in oppressive darkness. The giggles erupted anew, now a chaotic chorus drowning out my thoughts. Blurring sanity and despair together, I groped in the dark, fingers trembling over the chest, desperately attempting to understand the significance of these relics, when the laughter turned into screams. Soft children, of anguished souls tangled in torment. The room trembled as if it were alive, quaking with long-ago memories clawing at the veil of time. "Help us," they cried, voices intertwined in suffering. "Release us." Suddenly, a blinding light erupted from the locket, filling the room with an unearthly glow. I was momentarily stunned, shielding my eyes from the radiance. But when I regained my sight, the chest lay empty, and the shadows twisted maliciously around me, grasping at my limbs as if fighting to reclaim their lost treasures. "Mommy!" Her voice was now frantic, echoing in my mind, but the cacophony around me drowned it out. "Help me! You have to find me before it's too late." My breath caught as the ground beneath me groaned again. Splintering as the figures returned, they rushed toward me, their forms no longer mere shadows but grotesque amalgamations of despair. Children twisted in unnatural ways, their faces twisted with grief and anger. They reached out, their bony fingers brushing against my skin, leaving behind a trail of freezing panic. I staggered backward, fighting the urge to flee as they beckoned with their sorrowful eyes. Yet, even in their anguish, I could sense a greater force lurking behind them, something dark and ancient, lurking patiently at the edge of perception. I turned on my heel, sprinting back toward where I thought the entrance might have been, heart racing like a drum. But the whispers spiraled into a raging tempest, swirling around my ears, and as I slammed into a wall, its surface blossomed with blackened vines. I had nowhere to run. "Join us," they chorused now, their voices a siren's song that wrapped around my heart like a vice, threatening to crush it. Shadows lashed out, pulling me into an embrace that promised eternal sorrow. Just then, through the cacophony, I heard something monument a la bone-chilling laughter that grew louder, reverberating through the darkness like a death knell. The echoes spiraled, intertwining with my spirit as I felt them breaking in that space, piece by piece. In a moment of horrific clarity, I realized with dawning terror that I was not just a lost figure among the damned. I was their kin, woven into the fabric of their fate. The realization struck like a shard of glass, splintering through my mind. And then, as I peered into the darkness once more, a new darkness emerged, one ID never felt before, looming ever closer. "Welcome back," it hissed, and before I could scream, the world around me shattered into 1,000 echoes of despair, and I was consumed. As the remnants of my surroundings dissolved into a maelstrom of despair, an unmistakable presence seized hold of my entire being. It mocked me, a dark reflection of my spirit, tugging at the very fibers of my soul. The void morphed into a surreal tableau, a nightmarish playground where shadows danced maliciously, painting a history of sorrow upon the walls made of twisted limbs and haunted eyes. I gasped, my breath coming in heaves, as the fierce laughter echoed a sinister welcome among the cacophony of lost hopes. "Welcome back," it hissed again, this time tinged with a warmth, for it was familiar, achingly so. It bore the timbre of forgotten memories, an echo from a childhood long buried under serpentine regrets. My knees quaked beneath me as murky figures swirled above and around, their visions slicing into my psyche like splintered glass. They were the children I had once seen frozen in photographs, their twisted innocence now manifesting in grotesque shapes. I felt the chilling caress of their icy fingers snaking around my wrists, urging me to join them in their eternal suffering. Screams reverberated through the darkness, but they were now interspersed with something altogether more devastating, a soft sobbing that sliced into the heart of the horror. "Mommy," it was my daughter's voice again, filtered through anguish, pulling at the threads of sanity still clinging to my mind. Panic surged within me, igniting every survival instinct that had been dulled by despair. "Where are you?" I screamed, the plea drawn from the depths of my weary soul, almost a prayer. The shadows quivered momentarily. For a heartbeat, their advance paused as if granting me one last flicker of hope. But, just as quickly, laughter erupted, drowning my voice in a wave of torment. With every ounce of desperation, I sprinted forward, each hand reaching out to grasp the silhouettes that fled just beyond the edges of my vision. My feet pounded against a surface shifting beneath me. Was it the ground? Or perhaps it was the heartbeat of a wretched entity thrumming beneath the surface of reality. Each step was a struggle against the oppressive weight of despair that threatened to drown me. "Mommy!" The cry once again sliced through the drone of laughter. I veered left, following the sound, pushing through the undulating mass of shadows. The darkness became viscous, clinging to my skin with ghastly intent, the shrieks of countless children hanging in the air like a fog of anguish. Then, without warning, I stumbled into a clearing suffused in dim illumination, where grotesque figures continued their twisted dance as if mocking every bit of hope I grasped at. In the center lay what appeared to be a makeshift altar, adorned with fading drawings, marred handprints, and wilting flowers. The air tinged with a thick scent of decay, burrowing under my skin, igniting a primal instinct to flee. But my daughter's voice threaded through the chaos. "Help me, please." The urgency in her call pushed me forward. I reached for a faded parchment lying atop the altar, words scrawled in a frenzied hand. "To set them free, a piece of your own must be given." A baptism of horror washed over me as dread coiled around my heart like a sedative whisper, urging my hand toward the altar. The moment my fingertips grazed the surface, an electric jolt coursed through me, curling my hair and seeping into my being. It felt as if a part of me was being tethered to this eldritch plane, a bond forged in blood and grief, as if inviting me deeper into their nightmare. I could hear the echoes of laughter again, more pronounced now, mingling with the primal Crisa morose symphony that resonated through time and space, vibrating in the marrow of my bones. I cried out, wrenching my hand back, but something took hold of my wrist, icy and unyielding. The figures began to swirl, a whirlwind of rage and sorrow converging upon me. They twisted into forms I recognized. Former friends, family, faces I had once loved. Their eyes vacant, pleading as they emerged from the darkness. "Help us," they echoed, their hands extending towards me with an unearthly desperation. I could feel the sheer weight of their expectation, demanding that I absolve their suffering at the cost of my own. The altar pulsed violently beneath me, a living entity groaning with the weight of its purpose. "You must choose," the voice whispered intimately, flooding my thoughts, wrapping around me like a vice. My heart thundered in my chest, suffocating in the dread of the choice confronting me. As I looked at the faces of those tortured souls, another scream shattered the silencia, primal wail of anguish that rattled the fabric of reality. "My daughter!" I spun around, tears cascading down my cheeks as visions of the altar morphed before me. The air thickened, a palpable presence mounting in the space as shadows flitted around, laughing in cruel delight. "Join us," they whispered, drawing closer, their hands beckoning me endlessly, ravenous for the release I could offer. Somewhere in the chaos, the altar beckoned with its promise of salvation, but at what cost? And just as I felt the last threads of my will begin to fray, a shadow lunged from the void, wrapping around me in a suffocating embrace. With a feeling that felt like both liberation and demise, the world collapsed once more into an unending scream. The darkness enveloped me entirely, and just before it consumed my every thought, I glimpsed a pair of familiar, pleading eyes. "Mommy!" Then it was gone, lost in the thick, unimaginable void where hope dared not linger. I stood in the suffocating darkness, my senses overwhelmed by the weight of despair that clung to me like a shroud. Each breath felt heavy as my heart thundered in my chest, a relentless drum echoing the anguish that had seeped into my being. I had tumbled through dimensions of horror, danced with nightmares, all in pursuit of the one thread of hope that had lingered me, daughter. But now I found myself caught in a web, spun from the very essence of fear and regret. The whispering shadows surrounded me, their voices intertwining to create a sinister symphony of lament. I could feel their presence pressing in, alive with a malevolent intent, urging me to join their ranks. "Help us," they murmured, an echo of voices pleading from the depths of sorrow entwined with the shadows. "You belong here," I staggered forward, a desperate instinct guiding my feet, trembling with the realization that this realm was Olivia's sentient void of torment, where lost souls wriggled in eternal agony. Sinister shadows slid against the walls, contorting into grotesque forms of children, their faces warped by despair, eyes hollow and void of hope. It was as if they were fragments of my past, reflections of a joy long extinguished. "Mommy!" the voice pierced through the chaos once more, a haunting whisper that ignited hope even amidst the encroaching darkness. My daughter's figure flickered into view, her silhouette ethereal yet translucent, begging to be freed from whatever shackled her in this nightmarish realm. "I need you." Driven by an instinct born of pure desperation, I stumbled forward. The laughter of the shadows twisted and morphed, darkening my resolve as they surged around me, threatening to pull me into their eternal embrace. "Become one with us," they chanted, weaving a tapestry of doubt and anguish that threatened to unravel me. Embrace the darkness that as I reached her, the outline of my daughter shimmered like a mirage, daunted yet somehow free if only I could bridge the chasm that separated us. "What do I have to do?" I screamed into the vortex of despair, feeling my hope poised on the edge of oblivion. She hesitated, fear flickering in her eyes. "You must relinquish a part of yourself," she replied, her voice fraying, tethered to a sorrow deeper than the shadows surrounding me. "They will not let me go without I did I end that moment." An icy clarity washed over me, a brutal realization etched into the very fabric of my being. I stared into her eyes, recognizing the unyielding darkness that loomed behind Hera, darkness that thrived on despair and claimed souls for eternity. "No," I gasped, "I can't lose you. I want." But the shadows twisted tighter, burrowing into my thoughts, their insidious whispers becoming a chorus of anguish. "You must choose to save her or to save yourself. Join us," they wept, the collective sorrow forming a monstrous presence that swirled around, pulling at the edges of my sanity. With every heartbeat, the shadows pulsed, drawing closer, their fingers grazing against my skin with icy resolve. I felt my daughter's warmth flicker, the light of her presence dimming with every breath as the darkness danced eagerly around her, claiming the fragments of my hope. "Mom, please." The desperation in her voice cut deeper than anything the shadows could wield, drawing me into a reckless spiral of anguish and determination. I couldn't allow the darkness to consume her. I wouldn't betray her in this fight. That I took a deep breath, calling upon every ounce of courage I possessed, and I faced the twisted entities surrounding me. "I won't give you anything," I cried, defiance surging within me like a validation against the shadows. "I will face my darkness, my fears, and I will save her." All at once, the shadows roared, a cacophony of rage and sorrow surging towards me. They lashed out, wreathed in terror and malice, and in that moment, I felt their dark-hung era yearning for my surrender. I braced myself, the weight of countless lives bearing down, and just as I felt my resolve beginning to falter, a thought struck with unyielding clarity. "Your power is borrowed," I declared, feeling a light igniting within the depths of my soul. "You thrive in my fear, but I will not give you that power." Then the shadows recoiled, pulling away as if my words had pierced a veil of darkness. My daughter's image shimmered, her light flickering into brilliance for the first time, weaving through the darkness, momentarily blinding the wretched souls that sought to claim me. "Mom!" she shouted, her voice rising above the storm. That I in that instant, clarity washed over me, and I surged forward with newfound determination, not to surrender but to confront the very essence of the darkness. My heart pulsed with every beat, a heart that had loved fiercely, one that would fight until the bitter end. "Get away from her," I bellowed, unleashing a force of will that rippled outward. I felt the energy surge through me, sweeping over the shadows and igniting them in a brilliant light. The shadows shrieked and recoiled, moments of anguished faces emerging and disappearing in their thrall. "You will not take her from me." With every fierce declaration, the shadows began to dissolve like mist beneath the morning sun, unraveling their hold, and in the distance, my daughter's form began to solidify, inching closer. My heart soared with each step forward, embracing the light now illuminating the space that had once been soaked in despair. But then, as the darkness receded, a chilling realization clawed at my gut. I was losing not just the shadows, but also the essence of what had defined me. A deep fissure of foreboding settled within me, one that hinted at an irreversible price. "That's it. You're claiming her." The shadows shrieked, the last remnants of their presence tightening like a noose around my heart. "Feel the pain." Suddenly, their laughter warped into a feral scream, accompanied by grotesque, writhing forms spilling from the shadows as if corrupted by a gruesome birth. Those lost faces, once twisting with longing, now stared back at me, contorted with rage and hurt. "Join us," they howled as fallen limbs reached for me, grasping, pulling, probing for weakness. "Oh!" I screamed, the urge to flee overpowering any remaining rationality. I dashed toward the ethereal glowing figure of my daughter, her hand now extended towards me as though bridging the lingering gap of despair. But as our fingers nearly brushed, an impenetrable force materialized, throwing me backward with a force far beyond my comprehension as a single shadowy hand reached out, claiming my wrist with an invasive grip. I felt the icy touch penetrating deep into my bones, stealing warmth and hope. "Welcome home," it hissed, echoes reverberating through the void as if the entire realm resided within its wretched breath. And just before I could scream, darkness enveloped me, an all-consuming void that swallowed reason whole, and I finally understood the dreadful truth. I had fought for something that might never be rescued. The shadows had simply filled the void I had willingly left in my heart. As I was dragged into a swirling cyclone of anguish, I felt the remnants of my essence spiral away like raindrops lost in the storm. It was then I finally dared to open my eyes, finding myself once again in the house of horrors, the memories etched into the very walls, laughter and cries fading into a morbid serenade, with despair gnawing at my insides. I reached for the door I had once fled so desperately, only to find it ajar. From the attic, echoes of "Help us" glimmered through the air, familiar, no longer inviting but twisted, beckoning me deeper. As I stepped through the threshold, a shiver of recognition raced down my spine. Halfway up the stairs, Something gripped my heart with icy fingers, and I understood the deeper horror. It wasn't just my daughter or the memories haunting might was me. The cost of my fight was a sacrifice unseen, a rekindled darkness within that I could never extinguish. A ghost of my former self lingered in the shadows, one who had willingly joined the legion of despair, whispering the same haunting refrain, "Welcome back." In that chilling moment of lucidity, I knew the truth's cruel irony. Evil doesn't simply fade. It lingers, rooted within us, and perhaps it was home all along.